Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone from Melbourne, Australia. I'm Adam Rappaport, research analyst and tech wizard with the team here at GAI Insights. And I'm your moderator this week and TGIF. Welcome to the daily Gen AI news briefing, where we rate, debate, and determine the importance of the latest enterprise AI news. We give it a final rating, essential, important, or optional. And today I have with me some of our usual suspects, John Sviokla, Luda Kopakina, Ankaj Handa, and our special guest, Kevin Petrie. Welcome, Kevin. Kevin is a vice president of research at Bark, a leading research consulting firm for data analytics and AI. And it's great to have you with us today, Kevin.
Thank you, Adam.
For everyone who's listening along on our website, gaiinsights.com, if you go to /articles, you can see the links to all of the URLs for the articles today. And thank you, Ankaj. Let's jump right in.
Thanks, Adam. So the first one that we have put today comes from Mistral, and they have launched a new model called Small 3.
Yeah, Mistral Small 3. Who do we have on the list here today? John, do you want to start us off with this impressive small model?
Yeah, I thought I was going to give this an important. Mistral, obviously, a great innovative company. We've got this first graphic. I think for me tells the story, which is if you look here, the performance is very high and the latency is very low, and so that combined with the fact that it's a small model, I think means that it's going to really enable a ton of edge cases. So whether we're talking about on your laptop or, on your phone. And I believe that a lot of human interactions, whether it's customer service or, we talked yesterday about voice, that latency is going to be a big issue. I happen to have the good fortune to know some of the folks who built the very early thinking around personal computers, folks like Alan Kay and Gordon Bell and so forth. And latency was a critical part of how they designed those, because if you look at cognitive behavior, once you get greater than about 10 milliseconds, then people start to notice it on a subconscious level and they get out of the flow. So the more we get to instantaneous, it's not a continuous function. It's actually a step function that when you go below perceived, when it seems instantaneous, then to a human, then that allows you to stay in a flow state, interacting with a device, and you're way more productive on lots of tasks. IBM showed this on, coding and so forth. So I think that this is a big deal. I think it's going to be a differentiator, and Mistral's got a great model out there with low latency, high performance. So I was going to give this important.
I like it. Yeah, going after the latency, which, as you say, is a very, very important consideration with these models. Welcome, Paul. Good morning.
And size.
Yeah, and small. That's right. Kevin, what do you think?
I agree with what John says. I think it's important reading. I like how they articulate examples of use cases that make sense. I like how they segment the market and say the 80%, that's obviously a rough figure, that requires very rapid handling of instructions. And so it's important for those reasons. It also reinforces some existing trends. We have a dynamic, competitive threat to the proprietary models from open source. Models are getting smaller, which is good all around in terms of economics. And it's good to see a French company competing and representing Europe well.
And released under Apache 2.0, right? So.
There we go.
Super. Luda, Paul, anything to add? You good with important?
Yeah, I agree. What we have on the screen is specific cases where they suggest that the model is best, right? So what we are seeing in the market, the real sort of, not bifurcation, but cluster of models that are going at this low latency, fast response in the specific situations. And here's the 5 use cases, like the fine-tuning on the edge, fine-tuning to be an expert in a particular space on the edge. I think on your PC or your mobile is a great use case. So absolutely important.
Yeah, I would just add, Adam, I think we continue to see, though, just an absolute explosion of better mousetraps. And we're seeing that here in the small model, and distribution counts. And I think we're still going to, when we think about who the leaders are in the small and large models 2-3 years from now, I think distribution is going to be a major factor in that. Mistral hasn't yet shown major innovations in that. So I think from AI leaders, I think about the 2 to 3 year strategy, what is your distribution and how good is that distribution to help you improve your widget is an important factor. So I think this is yet another great mousetrap out there with not enough distribution.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the one thing I think is interesting is going to see if the telecommunications companies wake up, like T-Mobile and Verizon, AT&T, and so forth, and because they could be fantastic distribution, if they decide they want to do that.
Yeah, but
they haven't decided yet. They've been the caboose for decades.
If you scroll down, Ankash, they're showing where they put it. So they just announced it, but it's already on inference providers, quite a number of them. And I think it's an AWS, and I'm not sure about Microsoft, but they will be. So they are working on it. It's not, and it seems like they have their own inference platform, but they're not advertising it as much. So they are really going after the distribution.
But I think the problem with distribution is it's one thing to get in a Walmart store. It's another thing to get demand pull through.
Yeah, no,
I think anyway, it's
yeah.
You can.
I think the challenge is there's just an explosion of innovation everywhere, which means we're not going to have market share leaders that have 20. There's not going to be 20 small model market share leaders 2-3 years from now. And I think
I'll just give you one unique selling position here, which is that you don't need a Hugging Face or an Ollama. If you have a MacBook with 32 gigs of RAM, you can run this thing on your own machine, right? And that starts to become a big deal for a lot of companies where they want people to literally have local inference. This really has a small competitive advantage because they've gone small. Back to John's point. Let's call it important and move along. Good, everyone. Thanks. Good discussion. Ankash, next article.
The next one comes from AI2, and it talks about scaling the Tulu 3 post-training recipes to surpass the performance of DeepSeek V3.
Post-training recipes, Kevin. What do you think about what they're cooking up over with Tulu?
Okay, so this is Paul Allen's institute, operating, I believe, on a nonprofit basis, and part of their goal is to enable a vibrant open source community to build and refine models. And so this is a pretty technical summary of how they went about training their latest models. I think it's important. I think it focuses a lot on the technical aspects of the training. It doesn't focus much on how you'd actually use this stuff. In contrast to the Mistral announcement, I like the Mistral announcement because they talked about use cases and where you could really put this stuff to work. This is more of a here's how we got our horse to run in the race, but it's done with the intent of helping other people really contribute to that open source community, which I thought was cool. It reinforces some of the trends we've already been talking about on the prior discussion. It's a very competitive space, and it's interesting to see that DeepSeek, just underscoring the explosion of innovation that Paul talked about. DeepSeek is already one to beat, and folks are eager to compare to it.
And they're already meeting.
Important.
Yeah.
I think it's it would be nice if it talked a little bit more about how you'd actually use this as a practitioner and an adopter, but it does foster a lot of innovation.
So overall, though, important, optional?
Overall, important.
Okay, we have a vote for important. Paul, what do you think?
I can support important. I don't know, I'm saying strong. I can support important, and my vote's still for sale today. So,
Ludo, what do you think?
I actually rated it as optional. It's a little too technical, but the idea is to really push the boundary of the innovation. So they provide all the articles and the like, and it's really about taking the model like Llama, right, and with the biggest model, 405B parameter model, and then working with various innovations to speed it up. So I think it's very narrow group of people who are interested in that, of what the guts are. So I was thinking optional.
Yeah, I was thinking optional as well. I think that there's a couple things come to mind. One is I think it's amazing how we're taking each component of how you do algorithmic innovation and starting to optimize that. And so I think it's an incredibly important trend because, this is where a lot of the value is going to be over the next year, I think. But for me, this is optional.
Yeah, I think I'm going to lean towards optional as the final rating here. Kevin, you make some good points, and you also said as well that it was a little bit light. So we'll give it the O, and we'll move along. Thanks.
Fair enough.
Next thing that we have is around DeepSeek R1. So now it is available on Azure AI Foundry and GitHub.
Yeah, wasting no time. Microsoft getting this right into their model catalog. Who do we have here? Let's go to you, Paul. What do you think of the news?
Yeah, I thought this was probably optional, to be honest. I do think maybe it's important just because let me be more clear. I think it's important just because it's a newsworthy here. This is, to be real clear though, this is my understanding. This is the DeepSeek model run in the Azure framework. So you're getting access to the API. It's not the DeepSeek chatbot application. It's not the DeepSeek mobile application. So if you want to build an application with an API call that's sitting in a trusted hyperscaler, this is an option. You still have the open question on, is there how much bias is there towards the Chinese government and the text answers, and is there an actual backdoor or not? But it's a step towards that.
Yeah, I was going to give it important because they say that they've done the review in terms of backdoors, right? So they're pretty. Microsoft's confident that they're not. It doesn't have a backdoor that's sending the info out. If you want to get access to this model, which is pretty performative, I think getting access through Azure AI Foundry is a nice place to do it. I didn't see anything about indemnifications or anything.
That's where I was going, John. Yeah. So if I'm choking on the Copilot price for Copilot for secure employee chatbots, this is a nice option. I just have an indemnification question.
Yeah, but because it's the hottest current model on one of the biggest platforms, for me that was important.
Yeah, I agree. Important. I think Microsoft puts a stamp of their approval, essentially, of making it available. So I think if people want to experiment with this model, I think this is worth flagging. Yeah,
and Luda and Adam, Ankaj also noticing that AWS has also come forward with a similar thing, and
that's right.
It'd be interesting to see if Google Cloud does as well.
And I think it is important because this is a breakthrough model, right? And it will spur another wave of development. People have to try it, right? So making it available is great. Kudos to Microsoft and kudos to AWS. I think this is great.
Kevin, anything to add?
I agree. Important. Ultimately, models are only as good as the applications and workflows that present them to users. And this takes a good, fast step forward with what could be a promising disruptive model.
Yep. And both Microsoft and AWS provide the environment a whole bunch of tools that can be used for deploying applications. So having access to this model is cool.
And this might be a good time to mention today at 12 p.m. Eastern. I believe that's right, Paul. We have implications of DeepSeek on your AI deployments, a LinkedIn live stream, where they're going to look at the potential implications of it and come join the discussion. Anything I'm leaving out there, Paul?
No, that's it. There's a lot of interest, a lot of confusion, and a lot of implications. So I do think it's an important conversation.
Should be a great discussion at 4 a.m. for me.
I
hope you all have a good one.
Adam, but share, Adam, while you get the mic on this, share your view on the API cost. You were talking about a small experiment you were doing with OpenAI versus DeepSeek.
Well, yeah, Paul. I mean, currently we use GPT models for some of the inferencing with agents we're building to help with workflows at GAI Insights, and I was doing this deep research run looking for news. What we were talking about before, Luda, John, combing a bunch of different sites and trying to find content that was relevant, and then trying to get summarization of it and passing all of that text over. And I think it was like $6 or something, and I was doing the math, and it would be like 20 cents with DeepSeek for the same API, and that starts to have a material cost on your business over time. If you have to do something like that every day, $6 a day versus 20 cents a day, it can make a huge difference. So this DeepSeek it's in specific, but more the trend generally as inference continues to go to zero, thinking about where are you going to run that and how are you going to run it efficiently is very important. Thanks. Let's move along. More news
The
out of
next one again
Microsoft.
comes. Yes. This one also from Microsoft, where Microsoft is making OpenAI's O1 reasoning model free for all Copilot users.
So we see DeepSeek reasoning making everything cheaper, and now Microsoft's giving away O1 reasoning. Ludo, what do you think?
I was between optional and important, but because Copilot and Microsoft is in so many companies, I think I ended up saying important. So, but they're not giving it away. They're charging for it, and actually a high fee. So I think it's putting it as a part of the Copilot Pro feature. They call it Think Deeper tool, right? So putting it as a part of Copilot Pro, I think they're
Sorry, Luda, I need to interrupt and correct you. It's been available for Copilot Pro since I think last October as the O1 model. It is now for free for all users.
For all users, right? So
at any level, even the public Copilot site.
Right. Thanks, Adam. Yes. So, but they're charging for Copilot and high fees, and there was grumbling in the market that it is too high for the value provided. So this is just balancing the levers, I think. So, but it's important announcement, and it's great that this is now included in Copilot. So I gave it an important.
Boy, I tell you, if I'm an investor, I give it important as well. If I'm an investor, this would really give me pause if I'm investing in any models, because you can see, Microsoft's willingness to just give away, stuff they used to charge for. So I love to see it. More consumer surplus for us all as Godzilla and Mothra and King Kong kind of fight it out here.
Yeah, I mean, John, the race to the bottom of free models that are exponentially better than they were 12 months ago is breathtaking. And I don't see how it slows down.
And Ashish is underlying what Kevin has said, and that is the model is as good as the application that leverages it. And so it's great that Microsoft is doing this, but we need to see applications built on it.
Yeah, there's a fantastic book called Value Migration by a guy named Adrian Slowatsky that talks about the relationship between what companies offer and the maturity in the market. And so one example was in the early days of personal computers, right? It was speeds and feeds and people buying stuff. And then you had, retailers who, like CompUSA and Gateway and so forth that actually took customers through it. I think we're in the speeds and feeds part of the market. In time, we will get to the actual application level stuff. So I do think we need to be careful about market development, and speeds and feeds matter now. So I hear you, Ashish. At the same time, the people who are making this stuff happen, we're early, and the value will migrate to actual applications more. But I think the capabilities are really important right now.
Super. Kevin, anything you'd like to add?
I was going to make a very similar point as John, that as I think investors are belatedly and rightfully taking a very hard look at how these gorillas are spending money and whether they'll ever get it back in terms of training the big models. DeepSeek was a good wake-up call in that regard. But in the end, even if it's a massive public works project in which profits get spent by the Microsoft and Googles of the world on this stuff, it's good for end users. It's good for practitioners. And overall, I think important. good step for the folks that use this stuff. Maybe not such a good sign of health for the folks that are building it.
And I'll call out actually, Luda, another correction. There is now, as of 2 weeks ago, Microsoft 365 Copilot chat. Everyone who has an M365 license now has free access to Copilot. You don't need an additional license to that. They just did that 2 weeks ago. And then to now start offering O1, so they're competing with OpenAI's paid offering. Right on the day allegedly of when O3 is coming off, you can just see the competitive pressure across the landscape, and it's good news for the users.
I see.
So
you think they are kind of giving it away rather than?
Oh no, they absolutely are. Anyone that has an E3 or an E5 or a CSP licensing, the M365 license, now has free access to Copilot.
Yeah, Microsoft, I think made it.
They tried to get as much money out of that for as long as they could, but it was time.
Yeah, but
apparently.
it's really confusing with all those Copilots right
It
now.
absolutely is. Absolutely is. Great, thanks. We'll call this important and move along.
The question that we have is around agentic AI, and it talks about how ServiceNow AI orchestrator is automating complex enterprise workflows.
So we've got the big bet from ServiceNow, Kevin. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd say important. It's what I like about this. It's a product announcement, but it goes beyond just what ServiceNow does and explains why orchestration is important. As we've said before, these models are great, but you need to put it into a sequence of tasks that becomes an application, and then ideally agents, and those agents are going to work with each other. That requires a lot of orchestration, and arguably that's the harder work to do now because the models are pretty darn good already. It's really a question of how you have them interact with each other, interact with predictive ML, interact with standard application tasks, invoke autonomous tasks, and then consume, most importantly, consume proprietary enterprise data. That's a lot of tricky development work to schedule, monitor, execute these workflows. And I think that this article gives you a good peek into what's required to do that and how one commercial vendor can help. Ultimately, it's more of a product announcement, so I don't think it's essential, but it's an important set of considerations for organizations to consider. It's not just about getting the right model. It's about putting it to work with your applications and your enterprise data.
Well argued. John, what do you think?
Yeah. Well, I hate to do this, Kevin. I was thinking this is one that could have been, should have been done by the robot. I thought for me, it was optional. The point, I do think the point of integrating with existing stuff is important. To me, and maybe it's because we're right in the middle of trying to figure this out. To me, there's a bright line difference between inside the enterprise agents and the ones that go fundamentally in consumer environments that are pretty well trodden. So when they have examples of book a hotel and a plane. The standard APIs for that stuff and interaction with those things is incredible. Those have been around for literally 50 years. What this doesn't highlight, and we're starting to discover, Ashish is giving you, and he's on the ground building these things, so he agrees with you, Kevin, that it's important. But the inside the enterprise stuff, I think what's missing here is that it doesn't speak to how important the APIs are, the governance and the access to data and so forth. And that's something that we're writing up some thought leadership on. But it's really the balance between API maturity and AI maturity if you're going to go inside the enterprise, because those APIs in many organizations aren't that standardized and so forth. And ServiceNow is in the middle of making all that happen. Anyway, I was going to give it an optional. I could be convinced to important.
I was going to say, even as you give it an optional, I feel like you're making a pretty good case for why it could be important.
Yeah, but this is the reason I gave it optional is kind of like, trust us, it was great. We did all this cool stuff. Give me one of the Amazon, case studies that actually, okay, what did you do? How did it work? Something. Give me something.
Yeah, I agree with John. It is a little light, but there's certainly a a trend, right? So they underscore one point that we haven't yet mentioned, and they put together the workflow data fabric that has the layer of data put together in a way that this orchestrator can access, and they equip the orchestrator with memory, long and short-term memory. So as a result, they're building that massive graph, essentially, of how it could, the enterprise whole data memory agents graph. And that is what we will see going forward to make it much faster to create the apps. So I just feel that all of those things are important points. The article itself is a little short on substantiation. Yeah. So but I think it's still important. I would give it an important positioning it this way, that those are good points.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obvious that AI orchestration is a massive market. There's at least 1,000 vendors going after this thing, so I think that's not new. I do think what's interesting are these vendors like ServiceNow and HubSpot and Salesforce, who already have marketplaces, which is a kind of orchestration of approved vendors before as plugins to yours. I think that is a very natural place for them to extend and go, because they've got data, and you can see like an agent marketplace that HubSpot's doing around the HubSpot database. But I think it's optional unless you're a ServiceNow customer. If I'm not a ServiceNow customer, I don't know what I do with this article.
Yeah, I will say that I see a trend where when people have no friggin' idea what they're doing, they call it a fabric. You know what I mean? And I mean, it's going to be a fabric. It's all going to come together. Anyway. But the other thing, Paul, ServiceNow is so embedded with all these technology companies and stuff. Kevin, I could support important because this is an important vendor, giving us this thing, but it still bugs me that it's not very specific.
Adam, feel the power of the chalk.
And the fabric over it. Let's call it that.
I agree. Fabric is a terribly abused buzzword in the data space. Go ahead, Adam.
This is going down in the books as an important article. Maybe if Tim were here, it would be a lower back pocket because it's been a very strong use case. But yeah, I think we'll go with important here, and with this commentary around the bigger picture and not specifically this product announcement. Thanks. Let's get to the last one.
Okay, the last one comes from AWS, and it talks about how Keto Networks is using Amazon Bedrock to transform free text search into structured GraphQL queries.
Secure Access Service Edge, John. What do you think? You're on mute.
I was going to give this bad boy an optional. It's sure. I mean, we have this notion of giving context and dashboarding, secure access, so that you can get at incidents and respond quickly. To me, this is smart RPA, robotic process automation. Yeah, great, intelligence layer, big deal. People should be doing it. Absolutely, but to me, I don't see a lot of differentiation here in terms of anything new to our leader. It's nice that that's got the detail in terms of what the code actually looks like, and the beauty of working with Amazon Bedrock, which of course it does. Business impact, if you go way down the bottom, Ankaj, it's just it's very light. So technical approach, narrow product, not a lot on the business impact. I think nothing new here for our AI leader.
All right, an optional to start us off, Kevin. What do you think?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think I am predisposed to really like AWS case studies. They've done a lot of great technical work that helps, I think, business people and technical people understand how to put this stuff to work. This particular one didn't feel like it met that threshold. Just didn't have a lot of big aha moments for me about what AI leaders should be doing.
Yeah, that seems fair. Luda, anything to add? You good with optional?
No, I agree with optional.
Fantastic. Let's get up the final tally. Thank you, Ankaj. And let's see how we did on the day. We got some important news, 4 important articles and 2 optional. Pretty good for a Friday. Thank you, Kevin, for joining us. It was a pleasure having you. So great insights, great perspectives. And thank you from the whole team to those joining in and joining the discussion. We'll see you all next week.
Well, don't forget, noontime Eastern today, right? You got
noontime Eastern today.
We're going to talk about DeepSeek, and hope to see you there. Bye-bye now.
I'm looking forward to it. See you all.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.